What's going on, guys? My name is Brendan. This is the Franchise Tag Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm going to go over the Thursday night game recap and also the late game for Sundays. So I do have some news and notes, though, I want to get into before I go over Thursday night because it is technically Friday. The guys who are going to play for Sunday are DJ Chark, if that's even relevant for you. Garrett Wilson is good to go. KJ Osborne is cleared. Justin Fields is back. Jalen Hyatt, Matthew Stafford, and Nico Collins. Also, Khalil Herbert has been activated. The guys who are going to be out this Sunday is Noah Brown, Hayden Hurst. Antonio Gibson is considered doubtful, but it looks like he's not going to play. And Damian Pierce tried to practice today, but he is not good to go for Sunday, along with Gerald Everett. So when I get into the Thursday night game here, it was the Bengals versus the Ravens. We all wanted a very fun and exciting game for Thursday night. We finally got it, but it came with some consequences, unfortunately. As you can see right off the bat, Browning came in for Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's done for the year. He tried to throw the football, and just his wrist apparently just couldn't let him do it. And then Mark Andrews has a broken fibula in his leg, and he's done for the season as well. So we lost two premier players in fantasy. It's unfortunate. I'll start with the Bengals side. I mean, it went downhill when Joe Burrow got out. Jamar Chase's day was saved because of a last-second touchdown in the end of the game when they were already down by 3 scores, so it was irrelevant. The guy who only was really featured for the Bengals was Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon still had himself a really good game. He is now RB8 on the season. I expect him to be probably in that fringe RB1, RB2 area. But again, 16 yards, 16 attempts, 69 yards, and then a touchdown on the ground. He got 18 points for you. Super excited. I don't know what's going to happen for the receiver side because they are just going to roll with Jake Browning. He's okay. I don't know if he's not going to elevate the guys like T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. I mean, who knows? They might get peppered in. I'm just really scared, and it's really unfortunate for anybody who owns the Bengals players right now. I think Joe Mixon's the safest out of all of them. On the Ravens side, Lamar Jackson, still, regardless of the 2 rushing touchdowns from Gus Edwards, who I said to not start, and it's just frustrating being a Lamar Jackson owner, but he still came out on top, 16 for 26, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he had 9 carries for 54 yards on the ground. This is a game you really needed from Lamar for the previous weeks of what he's done. At the end of the day, 23 points you're super excited for. And like I said, I told you to start Gus Edwards, and I'm eating my words frantically here. 12 attempts, 62 yards, 2 touchdowns, then he caught 2 passes himself. Keaton Mitchell was featured a little more in this game. I think 8 carries, 33 yards, and he did catch the ball 1 time for 8 yards. None of the guys really could get really going on the ground, it seemed like, for the Ravens. And then Odell Beckham, man, 4 catches, 116 yards. Again, another guy said to probably pivot out, but he did pretty well for you if you started him. He did get injured at the end of the game. I'm not sure as to what's going to happen with him. They said it was a shoulder, so I think he's going to be fine. It seems like he'll be fine. Zay Flowers, 3 catches, 43 yards. He's just been very mid, as one ex-football player would say. He's just been a jag. So I really don't know what to do with him. I know you have been high on him. I've been high on him as well. So you just kind of have to pivot out. And then again, unfortunately, Mark Andrews, he's done for the year. I know Isaiah Likely is probably the guy that will fill in for the most starts, but that's not someone I'd really want to pivot to as like a savior option. If there's other options on the waiver wire, I would definitely pivot towards that direction. All in all, it was a great game until Joe Burrow got out. It was looking like a typical divisional game, fun shootout game, but it is what it is. You got to move forward. Last game we talked about was the Giants versus Commanders. The next game I'm going to preview is the Buccaneers going into San Francisco. San Francisco is a 12-point favorite with the over-under being 41.5. I'll start with Tampa Bay side. Baker Mayfield has been playing pretty well for the season. I mean, he's quarterback 16, but he's been consistent with throwing at least, what is it? He's gotten over 230 yards, 265 yards, 278 yards in previous games with, a couple touchdowns peppered in there. And he's, not really running on the ground, so to speak, but, he's getting at least some sort of attempts there. I really wouldn't start him against San Francisco. As you can see what they did to Trevor Lawrence last week, I'd definitely pivot away. Rashad White, been phenomenal for you. He's RB13 of the year. I expect him to get most of his work in the ground game. So for PPR standards, definitely start him regardless. You got no other choice. And then Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, you leave him in. I know Chris Godwin hasn't been, what you expected. No, only one touchdown of the year. No real big breakout games he's had. So you still got to start him, though, for where you're at. And then I don't necessarily hate Cade Otton this week as someone you can pivot out towards, but just don't get your hopes up. And then on the San Francisco side, I think Brock Purdy has a pretty good game. Christian McCaffrey doesn't leave your lineup. And then the same guys like Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle, who just all been excellent this year. There's nothing really else to go from this team. It's pretty simple. There's no need to get cute with it. The next game I'm going to talk about is the New York Jets versus the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo is favored by 7 with the over-under at 39.5, so they're expecting a low-scoring game. I'll start with the Jets side. You don't start Zach Wilson. It's not worth even talking about. Breece Hall is definitely one of my favorites for the week. I like Breece Hall a lot in this spot against Buffalo. I expect him to get a little bit more attempts on the ground. They definitely need to get him going. We've been saying this a lot, but he definitely needs to see the ball at least 15 times. He's only had that since week 9. Everything else has been, and then week 5. But he definitely needs to touch the ball a lot more. And I think the record with him is I want to say 7-0 whenever he scores a touchdown. So feed him the ball, please. I will say an interesting guy that you can monitor is Israel Abanikanda. My apologies if I butchered that name. They did cut Michael Carter. A lot of the guys had a team meeting, and then all of a sudden afterwards he was cut. I think they expect Israel to be the replacement for Michael Carter on 3rd down. So, I mean, if you want to add him, you can. I don't get your hopes up. Don't start him. Just kind of wait it out. Garrett Wilson, who had an injured elbow through the week, is going to play, so he doesn't leave your lineup. And there's no one really else here I want to start on the Jets side. Tyler Conklin has been interesting. He has been on a heater for the past couple weeks. 6 catches, 7 catches for 66 and 70 yards. I don't hate if you start him. It's one of those spots where you're in a hope and a prayer. You go for it. Buffalo, Josh Allen doesn't leave. Now, I will say that this is going to be interesting because Joe Brady is taking over the play calling, so I don't know what to expect. Hopefully, they utilize their main guys like James Cook, Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid. I think those guys should definitely be featured. Not sure what to do, but you starting James Cook, I know the Jets are a really good defense, but you saw what he did last week against Denver. I think he comes out with the same kind of mentality. Stephon Diggs never leaves your lineup. Now, with guys like Gabe Davis and Khalil Shakir, I really don't want to. The only guy, if I had to pick between the two, would be Khalil Shakir. I think he has a better game with being a slot receiver against the Jets defense. And then, again, Dalton Kincaid. He's been excellent since Dawson Knox has been out, and I think even when Dawson Knox comes back, he still is going to be doing what he's been doing lately. So I expect Buffalo to win this game. I expect them to bounce back, and they're in a bounce back spot, and they need it. With the Bengals losing Joe Burrow, they are inching closer to being, the playoff team, so to speak, in that wild card, even though they should be fighting for the division leader. And the previous game, I have San Francisco winning. My apologies. Next game I'm going to cover is Seattle going into Los Angeles. Seattle, it's a pick 'em right now with the over-under at 46. I'll start with Seattle side. I don't hate starting Geno Smith in this game. I think the Rams just have a very low average defense. So if you're looking for a pivot option, I don't hate Geno Smith here. Kenneth Walker doesn't leave your lineup. And then, DK and Tyler Lockett. Jackson Smith-Njigba has been doing better lately. 6 catches and 4 catches, 53 yards. I don't want to start him, though. Maybe as a pivot towards a flex option if you really need it. I don't hate it. No real tight ends. I'm not going to start Noah Fant or Cody Parkinson. It's just not my wheelhouse to do so. And then on the Rams side, I don't know if I want to start Stafford. I know there's bye weeks and everything else like that, but I just think with him coming off the injury, could be more susceptible to re-injuring it. I'd rather pivot elsewhere. And this is probably the last week of Darrell Henderson, because I believe after this week, my apologies, their previous starting running back is going to be filling in place, and I'm drawing a blank on his name, but this will be the last week of Darrell Henderson. So again, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, I'm definitely firing up both those guys. I have even both of them in one league, and I'm going to start both of them. I expect both to be featured pretty well. I know Seattle has a really good secondary, but you're in a hope and a prayer since you drafted Cooper Kupp probably in the top 5, and Puka's been a savior for you, so I don't hate it. And then I'm not really going to start Tyler Higbee. I have no desire to start him. And the last game I'm going to cover is Minnesota going into Denver. It's a Sunday night football game, pretty exciting one. Two really hot teams. Denver is 2.5 favorite with the over-under at 41. My apologies, 45. I'll start with Minnesota. I definitely don't mind starting Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs, last week I was I was unsure how you do with the offense, and he was phenomenal. He played really well under Kevin O'Connell's offense, and it's going to make you wonder if he does well again this week, what they're going to do with the quarterback situation. So he's been QB7 in the year, which is so crazy to say. Madison, I believe, is going to be it's questionable, but I don't expect him to start. It's pretty hard for a guy to clear concussion protocol. So Ty Chandler is going to be the guy who's going to get the workload. I told you about picking him up. Definitely we're starting because Denver just has a terrible run defense. And Justin Jefferson is finally back. Super exciting. You definitely start him. You drafted him late or drafted him 101. You got to start him. Jordan Addison, again, I don't mind starting him. I think the only guy you don't want to start here is KJ. He just came off the concussion protocol, and I think he gets pivoted down with Justin coming back. And then in tight end one of the year, it's TJ Hawkinson. You're starting him regardless. And then on the Denver side, you know what? Russell's been having a really good season. Fantasy-wise, it's been okay. He's been on that fringe QB1, QB2 area. I don't hate it for this start. I know Minnesota has a pretty good defense. They've been playing great as of lately, but I don't hate it with this. I like Javonte Williams. I've been a big fan of his. I think he gets featured again. Last week, he had over 21 attempts. In the previous week against Kansas City, it was 27. I expect him to get over 20 touches easily. They just don't have anybody else that you can really rely on like that to get the bulk carries. Again, Cortland Sutton was featured a lot last week. 8 catches, 53 yards. He had a touchdown. He also had a fumble, but 11 targets is saying something. I can't start Jerry Jeudy. The targets haven't been there. The catches haven't been there. He just hasn't really been featured as a primary receiver in this offense. Marvin Mims is still kind of a wait and see. If one of those guys get injured, then he moves up. I definitely would like to start him because he actually is a really good player. Just hasn't been featured a lot lately. It's just unfortunate for whatever reason Sean Payton does. He's just not really utilizing him as an option. I actually think for this game, I think Denver does pull off the win. They're really hot. I think they're just heading in the right direction. I think Minnesota cools down here. So again, guys, I appreciate you for listening, taking the time out of your day to check out this podcast. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, comment below. Please subscribe, like this video. It really means a lot to me. So thank you guys.